If emotional, slow burn stories about broken people quietly becoming a family move you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next cinematic story on this channel. The ballroom lights were too bright. Crystal chandeliers spilled gold over polished marble, over gowns and tuxedos, and glasses raised in practiced toasts. Cameras flashed as Adrian Locke shook another hand, offered another safe, media-trained smile. Behind him, on a huge screen, his own face looked back. A headline floated over the image, Lock Care CEO leads historic merger talks. He heard the words, but they sounded far away. On the small card in his pocket, the real agenda for the night was printed in neat type, finalized terms, accept board conditions, agree to cut non-essential programs by the end of the quarter. Non-essential. They meant the fund with his mother's name on it, the one that kept people like her from being turned away. Adrian, his adoptive father, murmured at his shoulder, voice smooth, camera ready. They're waiting for you to say yes. Adrian glanced at this cluster of investors by the bar, then at the phone buzzing in his hand. His assistant's name flashed on the screen. He stepped away from the lights, into the shadow of a column. Yes, he said. There's something you should see, his assistant said. It came in the mail. No return address. I thought it was junk until I opened it. He heard paper rustle, then the slightest catch in her voice. It's a letter, she said. Old, addressed to Adrian Locke, or whatever they call you now. The only line inside says, you once said you'd protect me. I'm calling in that promise. Ridgeway. And the world narrowed. Ridgeway. The word hit like a hand to the chest. He saw iron beds in a long, cold room, thin blankets, the smell of bleach and cabbage. A girl with tangled blonde hair, standing between him and three bigger boys, chin up even though her hands shook. He had carved the words into a scrap of wood with a stolen knife. For you always. Do you still have the letter, he asked. It's on Marvanum, she said. But Adrian, it looks old. Definitely not from tonight. The postmark is weeks ago. I only noticed because he didn't hear the rest. I'm leaving, he said. His father caught his arm as he crossed the floor. Where are you going, the older man asked. Smile fixed for the cameras. You have a speech in 15 minutes. I have something more important, Adrian said. You walk out now and they will eat you alive, his father warned softly. The board, the press. Is this about your old charity cases, son? You can't save everyone. Adrian thought of a girl in a gray dress, splitting her bread in half because he hadn't eaten that day. He thought of a scrap of wood in his 12-year-old hands. I'm not trying to, he said, just one. He left the ballroom and stepped into the winter. Snow fell thick and hard on Denver. By the time Adrian's car left the city, the highway was a tunnel of white, headlights pushing only a small pool of visibility ahead. The GPS flickered, lost its signal, regained it with a jitter. He didn't need it. He could have driven to Ridgeway with his eyes closed. He had promised himself he never would. Years ago, when his adoptive parents took him home, they had locked the past behind expensive schools and polished shoes and photo shoots. Ridgeway became a story they told to make voters feel good. From orphanage to boardroom played well on camera. He had let them. It was easier to be the success story than the boy who woke up at night tasting hunger. But the letter had cracked something. At the edge of town, the old orphanage crouched at the top of a hill. The brick had darkened with age. One wing was boarded up. The chapel steeple leaned a little, but the cross still caught what light there was. He turned up the gravel drive, tires crunching over ice. The wind knifed through his coat as soon as he stepped out. For a moment, he saw the place as a stranger would abandoned, haunted, a ruin. Then he saw her, a small figure huddled on the stone steps, arms wrapped around thin knees, snow already piling on her knit hat. A plastic backpack sat beside her, half buried. He forced his legs to move faster. Hey, he called, voice soft so he wouldn't frighten her. Hey, are you all right? She lifted her face, blue eyes, red nose, skin pale with cold. I'm waiting, she said, teeth chattering. Mom said if I waited here, he would come. Who? Adrian asked. She fumbled in a pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. Her fingers shook as she unwrapped it and held it up. A small wooden ring lay in her palm, worn smooth by years of touch. On the inside, shallow letters curved in a line. For you always. His breath caught. He had carved that in a freezing dormitory, hunched under a blanket with a stolen pocket knife. He had given it to a girl named Nora Blake the night before he left Ridgeway, when the social worker came with papers and promises. He never got to give her anything else. What's your name? He asked. Elsie, she said. Elsie Blake. The world tilted. Where's your mother? Elsie, he asked, voice almost a whisper. Elsie pointed toward the side door of the building, half open, snow blowing in around the edges. She said she was too tired to keep walking. The girl said, she told me to sit here and not move and show you this if you came. So the letter had been real. The promise wasn't finished with him. Okay, Adrian said. Okay, you did everything right. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, lifting her small body into his arms. She was lighter than she should have been. Inside, the air was colder than out. The old common room still had a few chairs, a broken table, graffiti on the peeling walls. On a mattress pushed into a corner, under a thin blanket, a woman lay curled on her side. For a second, he saw the girl she had been. The same sharp cheekbones, the same determined mouth. Her hair was shorter now, dulled by illness, but when her eyelids fluttered, the eyes behind them were unmistakable. Nora, he said. Her lips moved. 80, she whispered, using a name no one in his new life knew. Then she slumped back into the pillow. Adrian looked at the clock on the far wall. Stopped years ago. He listened to the ragged sound of her breathing. He heard, under it, the faint wheeze of his own childhood lungs in a cold dorm. He pulled his phone from his pocket. This is Adrian Locke, he said when the emergency operator answered. I'm at the old Ridgeway home. I need an ambulance. And send it fast. The hospital lights were a different kind of bright, sterile, clinical, no chandeliers, no music, just the hiss of oxygen, the beep of monitors, the rustle of curtains. Nora lay in a bed in one of the private rooms, a line in her arm, an oxygen tube under her nose. Elsie sat in a chair by the window, feet dangling, Adrian's two large coats swallowed around her. Adrian stood at the foot of the bed with the attending physician. Severe anemia, the doctor said. She's been bleeding internally for a while. We stabilized her, but the scans, he tapped the tablet in his hand. There's a mass in the stomach. Large. Cancer, Adrian said. The doctor inclined his head. We need a biopsy for full staging, he said, but it's advanced. Given how long she's been symptomatic, I'd estimate stage 3, maybe beyond. Advanced. The word landed like ice. Is it operable? Adrian asked. Borderline, the doctor replied. It depends on what we find when we go in. She's malnourished and very weak. If she hadn't come in tonight, she might not have made it another week. And Adrian's hand tightened on the bed rail. Money is not a question, he said. She gets whatever she needs. Surgery, chemo, support. Put it under the Locke Care Compassion Fund. The doctor hesitated. With respect, he said, cases like this are exactly what the board is asking us to limit. High risk, low return, lots of bad press if it goes wrong. We've already pushed boundaries with the fund this quarter. Adrian met his eyes. Put it under my name, he said. If anyone has a problem, they talk to me. The doctor nodded slowly. All right, he said. We'll do everything we can. When he left, the room felt too quiet. Nora's face was thinner than he remembered. The tough girl who had stepped between him and fists in the playground is still there, but under layers of exhaustion. Elsie slid off the chair and came to his side. Is she going to die? She asked. Children didn't know how to soften words. Adrian knelt so he was at her eye level. We don't know yet, he said. The doctors are going to try to help her. And I'm not going anywhere. You're 80, she said suddenly. Mom says when she was little, you were all bones and eyes. She says you gave her the only birthday present she ever got. He felt a strange pressure in his chest. I was not very good at carving, he said. Elsie's fingers curled around the ring again. It's still here, she said. She kept it. Even when we had to leave our house. Even when we didn't have a house. He swallowed. Then I guess I'd better keep the promise that came with it, he said. He watched Nora's chest rise and fall. Every beeping line on the monitor felt like a countdown. He slipped his phone from his pocket again, this time opening an email from the board chair. We expect your signature on the merger documents by Monday. Continued funding of non-revenue programs is contingent on this deal. He stared at the sentence until the words blurred. If he signed, Lock Care would become larger, more powerful, more profitable. It would also lose the fund that had just been attached to Nora's name. If he didn't, the board might fire him. A new CEO could gut the fund anyway. You once said you'd protect me, the letter had said. He looked at the woman on the bed, at the girl clutching the ring. I'm here, he whispered, to both of them and to the boy he had been. I'm finally here. The cabin sat on a ridge above a small town 2 hours from Denver, where the sky felt closer and the snow seemed cleaner. It had been built as a retreat for the Locke family, a place to escape cameras and campaigns. Adrian had visited twice as a teenager, unwilling guest in a life that didn't quite fit. Now he opened the door and carried Nora inside. She was lighter than she should have been, even in the thick hospital socks and borrowed sweats. The chemo port in her chest peeked under the collar of her shirt. Elsie followed with a backpack and a stuffed animal under one arm, eyes wide as she took in the wooden beams and the stone fireplace. A nurse fussed with equipment behind them, an oxygen tank, a portable monitor, a box of medications. This is too much, Nora said when Adrian laid her on the couch and pulled a blanket over her. Her voice was hoarse, but the sarcasm was still there. Last week I was sleeping in an abandoned dormitory. Now I have a mountain view. You also have a treatment schedule, he said, and stairs I'm going to yell at you for trying to climb alone. She gave him a look that belonged to the girl he remembered, the one who would steal extra bread and pretend she didn't know who had done it. You always liked rules better than I did, she said. He smiled faintly. It's the only way I knew how to survive there, he said. They were both talking about Ridgeway. Later, after the nurse had set up the medications and shown them how to adjust the drip, after Elsie had discovered the small loft that would be her room, after the fire had been coaxed into life and the cabin smelled of wood smoke and soup, Adrian stepped outside with his phone. Snow fell softly now, more like a curtain than a wall. He dialed his father. Where are you? The older man demanded as soon as the call connected. The board wants answers. The merger team is jittery. The press has noticed you left the gala early. I'm at the cabin, Adrian said. With two someones, oh. There was a pause. Ridgeway, his father said. This is about Ridgeway, isn't it? About that girl? Her name is Nora, Adrian said. She wrote us once. His father said, years ago, a cheap ballpoint letter asking if she could see you. Your mother thought it was best to ignore it. We had just launched your campaign for the youth initiative. It would have confused the narrative. Adrian stared at the snow. You read it? He said. I skimmed it, his father replied. She sounded desperate. Son, do not let that place drag you back under. We gave you a chance to get out, to be more than that. You gave me a different last name, Adrian said quietly. You didn't change where I came from. His father sighed. Listen to me, he said. This merger is your legacy. You sign, you secure the company's future. You protect millions of customers. Don't throw that away because one woman from your past knows how to pull your strings. She's dang, Adrian said. From a disease our company exists to treat. From a life that broke her in ways we were supposed to fix. You can't fix everyone, his father snapped. Then softer. I'm trying to protect you from yourself. Adrian looked through the window. In Hayamahan, Elsie was showing Nora a drawing, all circles and lines. Nora's tired face softened in a way he had never seen on her before. I don't need protection from her, he said. Not anymore. He ended the call. The snow kept falling. Days at the cabin settled into a strange, fragile rhythm. In the mornings, Nora was often too sick to sit up for long, Chemo churned her stomach. The smell of coffee made her gag. She lay on the couch with a bucket nearby and a knit cap pulled low, skin pale under the firelight. Elsie built worlds on the rug, towers of blocks, forests of crayons, circles of string that she called safe zones. Only people inside the circle are safe, she informed Adrian one afternoon. No bad guys, no doctors with scary needles either. Just us. What about nurses, he asked. She considered. Nice nurses can be on the line, she decided. They can come in when we say so. Sometimes, when Nora's nausea eased, she told stories. She talked about bouncing from one foster home to another. Some were kind, some weren't. None lasted. She talked about scraping plates in diners, changing sheets in motels, delivering groceries for tips. About the man who had seemed gentle, who had said all the right things about building a home, who had held her while she cried about Ridgeway and promised he was nothing like the people who had left. He was very good at promising, she said, staring at the fire. Not so good at staying. What happened when you told him you were pregnant? Adrian asked, though he already knew the answer. The same thing that happens when you pull a plug, she said. Everything drains out. He took what he could carry. The TV, the good dishes, left a note saying he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. She looked at Elsie playing with crayons, voice softening. Turned out I was, she added, ready or not. You did it alone, Adrian said. Not alone, she corrected. I had her, and I had the memory of one stupid boy who carved a promise into wood and meant it, even if he couldn't keep it. The words hurt, but they were fair. I never stopped thinking about you, he said quietly. Thinking isn't the same as calling, she replied, without heat. He didn't argue. Instead, he went to the small box he had brought from his apartment, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside, under old photos and a folded program from his adoption ceremony, lay a second wooden ring. He had made it the same week as the first, with clumsy, determined hands. The words were scratched, but legible. For us, he held it up. I kept this, he said, long after everyone told me to forget. Tears filled Nora's eyes before she could stop them. She looked away, swallowing. The board did not like being ignored. Conference calls crackled through the cabin's small office. Faces appeared in the weak video connection, framed by tasteful art and glass walls. We are in the final stages of negotiation, the chair said. The other party expects commitment. Your personal situation cannot interfere with corporate obligations. My personal situation is the reason this company exists, Adrian said. My mother died because someone saw her as non-essential. I will not sign a deal that makes more people like her. Sentiment will not keep the lights on, another board member said. We're talking about tens of thousands of jobs, millions of policyholders. You cannot throw that away for the sake of one patient, no matter how attached you are. From the hallway, Nora paused. She had intended to ask Adrian if he wanted tea. Instead, she stood there, the words soaking in like cold water. Attached, someone on the call said, to a walking PR disaster. A woman with a tragic backstory and a terminal diagnosis. A ticking bomb. When she dies, every camera in the country will be pointed at you. Nora's hand tightened on the doorframe. She slipped back down the hall without making a sound. In the bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the suitcase in the corner. Elsie lay on the rug, asleep in a nest of blankets, a crayon still in her hand. Nora smoothed the girl's hair. I'm so tired of being a problem, she whispered. That night, while Adrian dozed in a chair by the fire, Nora wrote a letter. 80, it began in the same messy script she had used as a teenager. You don't owe me anything. You already gave me more than anyone ever did. You gave me someone to call in the dark. I don't want to be the reason you lose the only thing you built that keeps kids like us from falling through the cracks. So I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. I'm letting you off the hook. She folded the paper, placed it on the table beside his chair, and kissed his forehead while he slept. Then she woke Elsie. We're going on a little trip, she whispered. Just you and me. Now Elsie mumbled, Nora nodded. If we stay, we ruin things for him, she said. If we go, he can save other people like us. That's what he was born for. Elsie rubbed her eyes. I thought he was born to be 80, she said. Nora's heart cracked a little more. I did too, she said. But life had other plans. They slipped out into the cold. The bus station smelled like coffee and old snow. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A handful of people sat on plastic chairs, clutching bags, watching a screen that listed delays. Nora and Elsie sat near the end of the row, the suitcase at their feet. Elsie's head rested against her mother's arm, half asleep. The next bus to anywhere wasn't due for an hour. Outside, the storm that had been gentle at the cabin had gathered teeth. Wind pushed against the glass doors. Snow swirled in the parking lot. Nora's stomach cramped. Whether from the cancer or the chemo or guilt, she wasn't sure. She thought of the cabin's warm fire, of Adrian's hand wrapped around hers as she retched, of Elsie's delighted squeal the first time she had seen the loft. She thought of the voices on the call, calling her a bomb. She closed her eyes. Footsteps pounded against the wet tile. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Running away was always your worst idea, Adrian said, breathless. She opened her eyes. He stood in front of them, hair damp with melted snow, chest heaving. He wore no coat. In one hand, he clutched her letter, crumpled from being read. If you collapse on the way, what then, he asked. If Elsie, she corrected automatically. If Elsie ends up in another foster home because you tried to do everything alone again, is that really better? He demanded. People nearby glanced over, curious. Nora's voice shook. I heard them, she said. You're bored. Your people. Bomb. Disaster. When she dies, they're not wrong. You standing next to me is like standing next to a live wire. Adrian knelt in front of her. He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out the old wooden ring. The edges were worn smooth. The words inside were faint, but still there. For you always, I built an entire company because I could not forget this, he said, because a girl in a gray dress once put half her bread on my plate and told me I was worth staying for. Every time someone signs up for a policy they can actually afford, it's because you made me believe we deserve better. Tears slid down her cheeks. That's a nice story, she said, but stories don't fix balance sheets. No, he said, people do, and I am very tired of pretending I am not one. He looked at Elsie. Her eyes were open now, watching both of them. You told her I was born to be 80, he said. You were right, Asuie. The CEO thing came later. Elsie slid off the chair, dragging her small backpack with her. She took Nora's hand in one of hers, Adrian's in the other, and pulled them together until their knees touched. You said circles are safe, so she told her mother. Circles don't run away. They stay touching. Nora let out a breath that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. You're too smart, she said. Elsie lifted her chin. I don't want a story where Mom dies alone on a bus, she said. I want one where we go home. The announcement for their bus crackled over the speakers. Delayed. Indefinite. Nora looked at the doors, at the swirling snow, then back at the man kneeling in front of her. I don't want to be a bomb in your life, she whispered. Then don't explode, he said gently. Stay. She hesitated one more heartbeat. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. But if they fire you, I'm not letting you blame me. He smiled, sudden and bright. If they fire me, he said, we'll figure it out from the cabin. He picked up the suitcase. Elsie slipped between them, small hands holding tight. They walked back into the storm together. The photo hit the internet before they made it up the mountain. A grainy shot from a long lens Adrian in jeans, carrying a sleeping child in his arms. A thin woman leaning heavily on his shoulder as they stepped out of a clinic door. The caption did the rest. Billionaire CEO hiding sick lover in secret child in mountain love nest, while merger hangs in balance. By the time they reached the cabin, Adrian's phone was vibrating nonstop. He turned it off. At dawn the next day, a convoy of SUVs made it up the road before the snow got too deep. His father stepped out of the first, coat buttoned to the throat, jaw tight. You've really done it this time, the older man said as soon as Adrian opened the door. Do you have any idea how this looks? Like a man helping someone he cares about through cancer, Adrian said. Like a man abandoning his fiduciary duty. His father snapped. The stock dropped 10% overnight. The other company is getting ready to walk. The board is drafting a statement as we speak. Nora stood in the hallway, one hand on the wall for support. Elsie peeked from behind her legs. I can go, Nora began, if it helps. No, Adrian said. You're not going anywhere. He looked at his father. You did not drag yourself up this mountain just to scold me, he said. What do you want? His father's gaze flicked to Nora, then back. I want you to stop this before it takes everything, he said. Resign quietly. Let the board blame you, not the company. Sign the merger as your last act of service. Walk away with your reputation dented, not destroyed. And Nora Adrian asked, She is unfortunate, his father said. But she is one person. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization. Millions of policyholders. Don't throw them into chaos for the sake of a childhood ghost. Ghosts don't bleed, Nora said from the hall. Her voice was calm, or vomit in the middle of the night. His father flushed. I am sorry for your situation, he said stiffly. But you cannot ask him to sacrifice everything. I'm not asking him to sacrifice anything, she replied. I tried to leave so he wouldn't have to. He's the one who came after us. Adrian stepped between them. I'm not sacrificing anything, and he said, I'm choosing. He turned back to his father. I'll come down tomorrow, he said. I'll face the board. But I'm not signing anything I don't believe in. Not again. His father stared at him for a long moment. You sound like your mother, he said at last. Quiet, almost bitter. Too much heart. Not enough calculation. She died because someone miscalculated who deserved care, Adrian said. I'm trying to correct that equation. His father's shoulders sagged a fraction. Then he nodded once and left. The SUV slid back down the mountain. The cabin door closed. Nora leaned her head against the wall. This is going to cost you more than you know, she said. Maybe, Adrian replied. But some debts I'm not willing to leave unpaid. The boardroom felt different this time. No gala lights, no cameras. Just a long table among a dozen faces and a stack of documents. And security had escorted him through a side entrance to avoid the reporters clustered outside. He could still hear the murmur of their questions, muffled by glass. You've put us in a difficult position. The chair began. Your personal life is trending across every platform. The merger team is skittish. Shareholders are demanding answers. Then let me give them some, Adrian said. He set the unsigned merger agreement in the middle of the table. I will not approve this deal under the current terms, he said. Not if it means cutting the programs that keep people like Nora Blake from dying in abandoned buildings. One of the older board members sighed. This again, he said. Yes, Adrian replied. This again, this always. It's why this company exists. We put care in the name. We can't delete it from the budget. Do you realize you're risking a hostile takeover? Another asked. If we don't merge, we become vulnerable. A new owner will have no sentimental attachment to your pet projects. You think I don't know that, Adrian said. I have lived my entire life knowing how easily people like me get erased. I built this company to make that harder. If I sign this, I'm erasing us myself. The chair steepled his fingers. Then what do you propose, he asked. Adrian drew a breath. I will step down as CEO, he said. Effective at the end of the quarter, you can appoint someone who makes you more comfortable. But on my way out, we restructure. We put the Compassion Fund and the community programs under a separate legal foundation with its own endowment. I'll chair it. That way, even if the new CEO decides to cozy up to whatever conglomerate knocks next, they can't touch the part that keeps our promises. Silence followed. You're offering to fall on your sword. Someone said, I'm offering to use it, he replied, one last time. And what about the merger, the chair asked. Find a version that doesn't require us to kill our soul, Adrian said. Or don't. Growth at any cost is not the only measure of success. Several board members looked away. The chair tapped his pen on the table. "This is unconventional," he said. "The shareholders will not like losing their golden boy." "They already have," Adrian said. "At least this way, I go on my own terms." After the meeting, while the lawyers argued over structures and terms, Adrian stood in an empty office and opened his laptop. He started a live video. No media team, no PR filter, just his face under the plain ceiling lights. "Most of you know me as the CEO of Law Care," he said. "You've seen the campaign videos, the slogans, the success stories. You probably don't know that I grew up in a place called Ridgeway Home for Children." He told them about Ridgeway, the cold beds, the thin soup, the way kids disappeared when someone signed papers, never to be seen again. He told them about a girl who had shared her bread and her courage, who had stood in front of bullies and told them to pick on someone their own size. He held up the wooden ring. "I carved this out of scrap wood the week I left," he said. "I didn't get to give it to her. She kept the first one I made, somehow, through every bad foster home and every hard job. Years later, she wrote me a letter I never saw. Another letter reached me last night. It called in a promise I made as a boy." He didn't use Nora's last name. He didn't say lover. He didn't ask for sympathy. He just told the truth. "There is a woman with cancer sleeping in a cabin tonight because this company, the one with my name on its letterhead, was the only one that would treat her without asking for money she doesn't have." He said, "There's a 6-year-old girl who thinks circles are safer than lines because circles don't have sharp edges." He looked directly into the camera. "I have been asked to choose between my job and them," he said. "Between a merger that would make this company bigger and a promise that makes it worth anything at all. I am choosing the promise. If that means I don't get to call myself CEO anymore, so be it. But as long as I have a say, Law Care will remain a place where kids like me and women like her are not non-essential." He ended the stream. Within minutes, his phone, when he turned it back on, filled with notifications. Some called him reckless. Some called him foolish. Most called him human. Hashtags bloomed across feeds. For you always. Care means care. Circle not line. By the time he drove back up the mountain, the board had sent a terse message. "We accept your proposal. Transition plan to follow. No further public comments without counsel." He smiled at the screen, then put the phone away. The road to the cabin shone under the fading snow. The operating room was bright and cold. Nora lay on the table under a blue sheet, face pale but calm. The anesthesiologist murmured to her. A nurse adjusted the IV. Adrian stood just outside the swinging double doors, wearing scrubs over his clothes, his hair tucked into a cap. The surgeon approached, mask down around his neck. "We'll do everything we can," he said. "You know the risks." "I know," Adrian said. He did not trust his voice with more. Before they wheeled her in, Nora held out an envelope. It was thin, creased at the edges, his name written on the front in her familiar, uneven letters. "Only if I don't wake up," she said. His throat burned. "I'm not going to need this," he said. "Then you can tear it up in front of me later," she replied. "But if you don't take it, I'll worry about it the whole time. And you know stress is bad for healing." Even now, she could twist worry into a joke. He took the envelope. Her fingers brushed his. "Hey," she said softly. "Whatever happens in there, you already kept more of that promise than I ever expected you to." He swallowed hard. "I'm not done yet," he said. They rolled her away. The door swung closed. He sank into a chair in this empty waiting room and stared at the envelopes. He could open it, read what she was willing to say only if she was gone, know the shape of a goodbye before it was needed. His fingers slid under the flap. Stopped. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and gripped the paper until it crinkled. "No," he murmured. "You get to tell me with your eyes open." Hours dragged. He paced. He sat. He stood. He walked to the window and back. The sky changed from gray to darker gray. He thought of Ridgeway, of the first time he saw Nora steal an extra roll from the kitchen and slip it under his bunk, of the night she whispered, If they take you away, you better not forget me. He had failed that part. He thought of Elsie, curled up in a hospital chair with a blanket and a nurse watching cartoons with her so she wouldn't have to sit with the silence. He thought of the boardroom, the merger papers, the titles that would be printed on programs next to his name. He thought of a small, carved ring and a child standing in the snow. The surgeon emerged at last. The mask hung loose. There were lines of fatigue around his eyes, but there was something else there too. "We got it," he said. "The tumor? It was messy, but we believe we removed all visible disease. We'll need pathology to confirm margins. There's a road ahead, chemo, follow-up, but she has a real chance." Adrian sagged against the wall, his hand, still clutching the envelope, pressed to his chest. "Thank you," he said. The surgeon nodded. "She'll be in recovery for a while," he said. "You can see her when she wakes." Adrian looked at the envelope. His grip loosened. He slipped it into his pocket, unopened. The cabin felt different after the hospital. It smelled faintly of antiseptic now, under the wood smoke. Pill bottles lined a shelf by the sink. A schedule taped to the fridge listed medications and follow-up appointments. Nora moved slowly, careful of the scar on her abdomen. Her hair was thinner than before, her cheeks hollow, but there was a new light in her eyes. Elsie stuck closer than ever, as if afraid her mother might disappear if she looked away. One evening, when the sky outside was painted in streaks of apricot and blue, Nora called them both to the fireplace. "Sit," she said. They did. She held the envelope in her hands. "You didn't open it," she said to Adrian. "No," he replied. "You told me not to unless I had to." A smile tugged at one corner of her mouth. "And for once," she said, "you listened." She slid her finger under the flap and pulled out the folded pages. Her eyes moved quickly over the lines. Then she took a breath and began to read aloud. She read about the first time she saw him in the lunch line, all knees and ribs, eyes too large for his face. About the way he had flinched at loud voices and pretended he didn't care when someone stole his shoes. She read about how angry she had been when they took him away without warning, how she had thrown a cup at a wall and spent a night in solitary. She read about the motel rooms, the men who looked at her like she was temporary, the way she had carried the wooden ring in her pocket like a talisman. She read about Elsie's birth, about the terror and the aching love. She read about the day the doctor said cancer and how the room had gone very small and very loud. Finally, she read the part addressed directly to him. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. And I need you to hear me say this: you are not responsible for every bad thing that happened to me. You don't owe me the rest of your life as penance. You are allowed to love someone who stays healthy, who doesn't come with all this baggage. Take care of Elsie if you can. Tell her I fought as long as I could. Tell her she was the best thing I ever did." Her voice broke on the last line. She folded the paper. "She was supposed to grow up with you reading that to her," she said with me. Elsie's arms wrapped around her waist from the side, small hands clinging. "I don't want that story," Elsie said fiercely. Nora laughed, wetly. "Me neither," she said. She stood, a little unsteady, and walked to the fireplace. Adrian rose half out of his seat. "Nora," she looked back at him. "I don't need a letter that lives in a world where I'm dead," she said. "I need one that lives here." She crumpled the pages in her fist and tossed them into the fire. Flames licked the paper greedily, curling edges to black. For a moment, words glowed, then vanished. They watched in silence. When it was done, Nora turned back to them. "Okay," she said, voice steadier. "Now help me make something that stays." The 3 wooden rings hung from the cabin's door frame on a strip of leather cord. The first was the old one, worn smooth, the words almost gone. "For you always." The second was smaller, newer. Adrian had carved it in the hospital waiting room while Elsie slept, more carefully than he had at 12. Inside, in tiny letters, it said Elsie. The third was the widest. All 3 of them had worked on it at the kitchen table one afternoon, passing the small knife between them. The letters weren't perfect. Some lines doubled back on themselves. A few were deeper than others. "Home," it said. When the wind moved through the trees, the rings tapped lightly against the frame, a soft wooden chime. Time passed. Snow melted. Grass pushed through the damp earth. Birds returned to the pines. Adrian spent more days at the cabin and fewer in glass towers. A new CEO took his old office, a competent woman who understood balance sheets and, after several long conversations, the value of keeping the foundation's funding intact. Adrian became the face and hands of that foundation. He traveled to clinics with Nora when she was strong enough. He sat in support groups, listening more than he spoke. He met other kids from places like Ridgeway, some older now, some still small. He came home to the cabin smelling of hospitals and coffee, and Nora would make tea and laugh at the way he still burned toast. Elsie started school in the nearby town. It was small. The other children knew each other's parents and grandparents. For a while, she felt like the only outsider. Then, slowly, she didn't. One afternoon, she came home with a sheet of paper clutched in her hand. "Art project," Adrian asked, hanging up his jacket. "Family project," she said. "We're supposed to draw our family. The teacher said it can be any shape we want." She spread the paper on the table. 3 figures, drawn with careful strokes, stood holding hands. They were inside a circle. He recognized himself by the messy hair, Nora by the short, spiky lines that meant her hair was still growing out. Elsie had given herself the brightest eyes. "We're a circle now," she said, tapping the line. "That means forever, right?" He sat down beside her. "It means we touch at more than one point," he said. "It means if one of us moves, the others feel it. It means there isn't a beginning or an end, just around." She wrinkled her nose. "That's too many words," she said. "You're supposed to just say yes." He laughed. "Yes." He said, "It means forever." Nora leaned in the doorway, watching them. The scar along her stomach pulled a little when she smiled, but she was getting used to that. "Forever is a long time," she said. "Good," Elsie replied. "I have a lot of stories I want us to be in." They hung the drawing on the fridge, next to a photo someone had taken at a small ceremony a few weeks before. In it, they stood on the steps of what had once been Ridgeway and was now the Ridgeway Community Center. Fresh paint covered old bricks. The iron beds were gone, replaced by shelves of books and tables and chairs. Nora wore a simple dress. Adrian wore a suit that fit less stiffly than his old ones. Elsie, in a flower crown made of wildflowers, had just thrown a handful of petals in the air. There were no reporters, no campaign slogans, just a quiet officiant, a few friends, and a pair of signatures at the bottom of a marriage license. "Family," the paper said in legal words. The cabin knew that already. That night, after Elsie fell asleep with a book on her chest and a smudge of green marker on her cheek, Adrian and Nora stood at the open door. The rings clicked softly above them. Snow had not yet returned, but the air held the promise of it. "Do you ever regret it?" Nora asked. "Letting go of the CEO thing, the shiny life." He watched Elsie's chest rise and fall in the dim light. He looked at the rings. At the gala that night, he said, "They called the merger my legacy. The thing people would remember me for." He shook his head. "I think I'm okay being remembered as the man who answered a letter from a girl in the snow." She slipped her hand into his. "You took your time," she said. "I was lost," he replied. And now she asked about. He looked at her, at the cabin, at the faint glow of town lights in the distance. "Now," he said, "I know where home is." Above them, the ring that said home swung gently, tapping against the others, as if agreeing. Inside, in the small room that had once held only walls and a window, a girl who had once waited alone on cold steps slept between 2 people who were learning, every day, what it meant to keep a promise. The snow would come again. The cancer would need watching. Boardrooms would still buzz and balance sheets would still need balancing. But in the cabin on the ridge in Colorado, a circle held. And for the first time since 2 scared children huddled together in a drafty dormitory and carved words into wood, always felt less like a wish and more like a life being lived.